Welcome to Getting Defensive Weekend Primer presented by Gridiron Ratings. I love that opening. I am your host, J.J. and welcome to the off-season. Getting Defensive is back with our off-season content, getting you ready for your rookie drafts and more. But before we begin, quick shout out to our brother Gary, who's a little under the weather. Get better and get back soon. We miss you. Now, who is with me tonight? But the founder of Gridiron Ratings. You can find him on Twitter at NFL_DiMatteo. Jeff, how are you doing tonight, brother?
Man, I'm hanging in there. I'm fired up now after that whole intro. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to run through a wall right now. I'm gassed up.
Well, don't run through a wall because we're short on staff and we can't deal with any injuries right now. What is new with Gridiron Ratings?
Oh, man, so much is new right now. We're getting ready to make a ton of announcements. We've already made some, obviously adding a handful of people. JJ, obviously, we announced you just recently as becoming a new full-time member of the team, bringing on all of the Rider Dynasty team, bringing on all of your content and pods and all that kind of stuff. So that's a huge deal for us. We're very excited. Also brought in Dave Heilman with Dynasty Dorks. So huge announcement there. He's going to be helping us out with Dynasty content. We're very, very excited about that. And we've got a few more things up our sleeve here and there. We've got a handful more writers and other folks we've got to introduce. For the IDP folks out there, we did add another IDP guy. His name's Brandon Jackson. His handle is at BJack83 if you're not already following him. He's got a great article lineup right now going called Key and Diagnose. He's
fantastic.
Fantastic
really good article so far.
Absolutely. And so he's got a handful more. He's got 4 or 5 more in the pipe already planned for release. So if you're not tracking those, you need to. You can find all that as we post about it on Twitter and Instagram and all of that at Gridiron Rating on Twitter, at Gridiron Ratings on Instagram. You know, obviously you can find us on YouTube.
Look
Yep, look below. It's right there. We actually put a sweet little banner on there just so that you don't forget. And but yeah, that's some of the new stuff right now. We've got a few more things up our sleeve. I'm not ready to announce just yet, but
keep them wanting more.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's the secret. Well, I want to get right into the content. Now, as usual, I'm not a huge rookie guy, so I love when I host rookie pods, both on Dynasty and the IDP side, because I get to learn from the best.
Oh, so that's not me. I don't know what I'm doing here. If you want to learn from the best, we got to get somebody else. I don't know what the heck I'm doing here.
Well, listen, if you can't learn from the best, learn from somebody better than yourself. And that's where you come in, my friend.
That's a compliment. Appreciate it.
Now, we wanted to start off with a Senior Bowl preview. Now, some of the guys we were going to talk about decided not to participate. So I wanted to hit on those gentlemen first. Sure. Let's start off in Georgia. National champs, Quay Walker, linebacker. First round?
This guy is going to be a first-round NFL pick. I expect him to go in the back half of the first round. He'll end up being talked about as one of the top IDP picks off the board. He'll be a top 12 to 14 guy. I think that's going to be good. That'll go without saying. It'll depend on your league structure. You play with cornerbacks, maybe he gets pushed down just a little bit because there's so many corners in this draft. But if you're not playing with corners, this guy could be a top 5 or 6 pick pretty easily. I mean, he's a former Under Armour All-American. This guy's got some really good speed, very fluid in the pass game. He can change direction. He can cover really well. He's really useful in a lot of different formations. You can plug him in an even 4-3 alignment. You can use him in nickel or 4-2-5. You know, pretty reliable tackler, you know, generally wraps up. But he's not afraid to arrive with bad intentions if it's time to blow somebody up. If he gets the opportunity, he'll knock your head off. And it makes him really exciting to watch. You know, really looking forward to seeing how he plays out the next level. A couple things he might want to work on. You know, he doesn't get his hands in the right place in coverage. He's in coverage, and he does a nice job shadowing people and being around the football and breaking things up because he's hitting people. But what I'd like to see more of is getting his hands in the right place to knock the ball away or even, you know, collect more interceptions. You know, that's going to be a big thing for him moving forward, especially if he's used in those sub packages. Say sub, you know, 4-2-5 is used more than any other base package.
Yeah, it's basically the base now, right?
Right. Not a natural pass rusher. So if you're, you know, really sack heavy, might not be your guy. But if you get tackles and, you know, pass defense, then you're looking to make plays all over the field and you need snaps. he'll be a great add to your fantasy lineup. So definitely a guy worth looking at.
Yeah, now in true position, he will be a linebacker.
Yes, he'll be a linebacker. He won't be an edge or anything like that. He's not a guy that I would use, as an edge player ever. Like if he'll be drafted as a linebacker, he'll play weak side in some alignments. He might even go to a Mike depending on the team. But this is a guy that's not going to be lined up as an edge and sent to get after the quarterback.
Now, some possible landing spots, just looking through the draft, we're going to be talking about a couple of linebackers. The Jets and Eagles both have multiple picks, and both are in desperate need of linebacker upgrades. The Lions went through a lot of linebackers this year, lots of injuries. Look for them also possibly picking him up in the middle of the round. Anybody you have your eye on at maybe targeting Walker or the linebacker position?
I think it really depends on how the draft board plays out. And that happens every year, right? If a guy falls into the right situation, he could easily become, a guy somebody trades up for, right? So I really like the back end of the first round. If he somehow got to Detroit's second pick in the first round, it's going to be a no-brainer to Detroit. I wouldn't mind seeing a team like the Raiders step up and grab him. They had a kind of a rotation at linebacker. They lost some guys due to injury. They brought some guys in. But that's a team really in flux right now with a new coaching staff, new GM. I think right now their whole move is going to be adding versatile players they can plug in a lot of different alignments and formations. This is that kind of player.
Fantastic. Now, let's jump to possibly the number one linebacker in the draft, or at least top two. Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah, other side of the country. What's going on with Devin Lloyd?
Devin Lloyd is an exceptionally productive linebacker. He'll be the number two in my estimation right now. He's the number two linebacker off the board. A lot of mocks have him going as the number one linebacker. I still think he's a couple of steps behind Nakobe Dean as being that number one kind of alpha dog. Good instincts in coverage. This wasn't a heavily recruited guy, but he's got really good size, 6'3", 235. I'd really like to see him separate himself in any given category. He's not really elite at anything. He's not an elite tackler, an elite coverage guy, but he's really good at everything. He's not bad at anything. He's just kind of a really good kind of compiler type player. You're going to put him on the field. He'll play 85% of the snaps, and he's going to get you a bunch of tackles. Gary calls it production by default, right? That's this guy. And he's going to see a lot of that depending on where he lands. Doesn't have great athleticism. I'll be really interested to see how he measures. His vert and broad jump will be very interesting to me because I want to see that explosiveness out of him. And I didn't see it on film. I saw a guy who had great instincts and had a great first step, but I didn't see a guy that could hit that extra gear and be really explosive, whether it be in defending the run behind the line of scrimmage or even at the point of attack. So I want to see some more of that. I want to get those measurements in and see how he looks. But we're talking about a guy hyper productive, all of the stuff he does well in terms of being a reliable tackler, being useful enough in coverage. All of those things translate very well to the NFL. I'm not in on him in the top 15 or 16 picks. I think he'll be overdrafted if that becomes the case, a la Devin Bush, a guy that really similar, heavily productive, probably fast enough. He probably checks enough boxes where you feel good at the time of the draft. But then 4 or 5 years later, you're kind of like, man, we really need more from this guy. What's going on? And that's my only concern with this guy. But, like I said, looks like a really good prospect, a lot of development at Utah, and that's been a really nice program the last couple of seasons. So, he'll end up being a first-round player, second, third-round fantasy draft capital if you're in a blended league, probably a fringy first-round IDP talent. Again, if you're playing with cornerbacks as a dedicated position and you're playing with IDLs and you're getting really deep. If you're just doing DL, linebacker, defensive back, he's probably a top, 3 or 4 player at that point. Like him. Don't love him. I think he's probably going to get overdrafted.
PFF does love him. He was their 4th ranked linebacker last year. But, it's all about the measurables, unfortunately. And we're going to have to see what he can put up at the combine. The last guy who was on our list that we wanted to talk about who didn't go to the Senior Bowl, Jaquan Brisker from my local Penn State University. 6'1", 200. What do we think about Brisker?
Really good size for a safety. This guy was the number one JUCO safety when PSU recruited him. Bama was looking at him, Cincinnati was looking at him. So he was a guy that was pretty heavily recruited when you think about some of the top teams in the country right now. He's a long, rangy guy. He tackles really well. He passes, he passes really well. He defends the pass very well. He has an exceptional radius. I see this guy and I keep thinking, well, how's he going to make this play? And like go gadget arms, he reaches out there and knocks something down, or he jumps up and tips a ball away. He has an incredible way of closing a gap between a play being made and a play being thwarted. And this guy is that last line of defense. Does a really nice job. I fully expect him to crush the vertical and broad jumps. He's going to measure really well. He's going to be another guy. We're talking about him in the late first round. He'll be the second safety off the board. Kyle Hamilton's going to be the number one guy, right. And he's my number one player overall, period. And we'll talk more about him on a later episode, but he's incredible. The only concerns with this guy is that probably not instinctive enough to be left in single high coverage. He's not a guy that you can leave between the numbers and expect him to cover the whole field and know where to be just on pure instinct. It might take him a year or two to really get there. Might be a little bit of a project, but he has all the measurables to be a very dangerous player. I'm looking for him to measure similarly to like Byron Jones, who's out there in Miami right now, but better suited in like a too high, or anybody who's breaking into full cover 3. Imagine a place like Seattle would be a great place if he somehow slid into the second round. This is a guy that could easily take a deep third and be rangy enough to play with players like, Jamal Adams and some of the corners they have there, where everyone just kind of has a sliver of the field. And I think that would suit his lack of natural instinctiveness, but his athleticism will really put him in a good position to be around the football.
Yeah, and coming out of Penn State, he's going to measure well at the combine. Their strength and conditioning program is probably tops in the country. Their guys always perform well at the combine. So expect him to be moving up draft boards as that combine starts. All right, well, let's jump into the meat of the pod. Players who are actually at the Senior Bowl practicing this week. Devonta Wyatt, Quay Walker's teammate from Georgia, defensive lineman. Talk to me a little bit about Wyatt.
So this guy, he's not going to blow you away with his size or his measurables, right? He's 6'3", 313. Depending on your league type, he's an IDL, interior defensive lineman, defensive tackle. I expect him to go to a team that runs a 4-3. He'll be in an even front, and he'll play next to a more elite defensive tackle, similar to what he had this year, with Georgia on their defensive line. But this guy has got a lightning quick first step. For a man his size, he is moving fast. And if he's left in a position where he can one gap penetrate, single gap responsibility, 3 techniques, something like that, you're talking about a guy that is going to be a major disruptor. Imagine putting him in a position in Green Bay next to Kenny Clark, where you've got the Smiths on either side, or Gary and Zadarius Smith on opposite sides. He will be an absolute terror. I completely love his athleticism. A little better than you'd think, but I don't think he's gonna measure to the point where you're gonna be like, wow, look at this guy. What I'm loving right now is that at the Senior Bowl at practice this week, he is throwing people out of the way. He's blowing people off the ball. He is making everybody look foolish. I love the way he's hitting single gaps and getting after the quarterback and disrupting plays in the run and in the pass equally. He's been a real problem. The only time I've seen him get stopped is when I think they had a center, a guard, and a back, all triple teaming him on a rep. It was one of the team reps, and they shot the second view on the camera there, and there's Devonta Wyatt just getting smothered by 3 guys. It was the only way they could stop him. But I would expect him to be a guy that, hey, he's going to move a lot of blockers, uses his hands really well. He can slide down the line of scrimmage. If a team that runs a 3-4 wants to use him as an end and put him in a 4 inside or in a 5 technique, I think he could do it, but he'd be a year away. Not as strong as you might want for a 300-pound frame. I don't expect him to come out and put up 40 reps, but he's strong enough. Great hand punch. He has his hands in the right place at all times, uses really great leverage. He's not overly tall, so he can get under the pads of taller offensive linemen. I'd love him in a 4-3 as that 3 tech, but I think he can go into that 4-eye in a place like Tampa Bay, for example. And Ndamukong Suh's probably going to go away at some point. Maybe he could play in that kind of a role there and be labeled as a, quote, defensive end in a 3-4. Absolutely love him playing in a variety of different positions. Love to see him in Green Bay. I think that's the place where he would go to be at his absolute peak.
Green Bay. All right. Well, I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm a little bit nervous that he ends up on a 3-4 team. I always hate seeing rookies go to those types of teams. 3-4 tackle, defensive end player. I don't know. They tend to go with veterans more, get more playing time, only because they have a different set of strength than a young kid coming out. More that grown man strength that you need to stick that, the edge. All right. We've been worried about saying this name, but I'm ready. It's Kingsley Enagbare, right?
Yeah, you crushed
edge.
it.
Now he's getting a lot of talk. It's a stacked class at edge. We're looking at Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson, Georgia Karfaitis, I believe. All might go in the top 10. Sure. So what are we looking at with Kingsley?
This guy's got incredible acceleration to the football. He's wildly efficient with his first step. He's got great length. I really love the fact that at USC, University of South Carolina, not the other USC.
Other coast.
Yeah. We got him on the proper coast here. This is a guy that was used continuously on stunts and different inside rush moves. And for a guy who's 6'4", 265, he's got the speed, the athleticism, and enough strength that he can make that happen. So he's not just limited to being one of those kind of standing outside backers where you can only bring him off the edge. He doesn't have great bend necessarily. He's not like a TJ Watt or one of these elite pass rushers. It's going to just, be able to take you all the way around the edge every single time without fail. He's a guy that's going to have to set you up a little bit. His acceleration and his instinct to the football is very, very good. But if you've got him in a, again, 4-3 type scheme and you can set him with his hand in the dirt, he can go ahead and stand up, go hand in the dirt. He can run stunts and twists and really mix up blocking assignments there and be a really, really useful player. Now, if you're going to draft him for fantasy, you're hoping to use him as an edge, number one. Number two, you're probably going to put him on in a taxi squad or practice squad, whatever your league calls it, and sit on him for a year. Because he's not a great tackler in the open field, so he's not going to give you a ton there. You're going to be reliant on sacks. So you're going to want to keep him as that situational pass rusher. That's probably what his role will be at the next level for a year or two. And then once he kind of gets that full-time role in place, whether it's in a 3-4 as a dedicated edge or a 4-3 as a standing defensive end, either one of those roles will be great for this player. But we really need to see him be on the field quite a bit. Love the prospect. Think he needs a little bit of time to marinate, but you can probably get him cheap because of what you already alluded to with the number of edge players coming out. Hutchinson's going to go early. Thibodeau's going to go early. You're going to have, George Karlaftis is going to go early. There's a handful of other guys, he might be the 5th or 6th edge off the board in your rookie draft. And he could end up being a major league steal, being the 2nd or 3rd best guy of the group.
Now, do you have any concerns that he seemed, at least in his senior year, to compile all of his stats against the lesser teams? And when he was going against NFL talent at tackle, that he didn't really get a lot of pressure?
There was some of that where, as I tried to watch some of his games, the thing that I guess I was bothered by is I felt like they weren't as creative with him in some of the higher competition games. It seemed like they just relied on him trying to get around the edge using raw speed or just trying to get him to bull rush. And you need to be on any defensive scheme needs to be a little bit more creative when they're facing better competition. And so I feel like coaching might have let him down just a little bit because he kept flashing at times. And for me, when I say he flashed, I'm looking at how fast is he off the football? How well does he use his hands? I'm not trying to look at his box score and say, oh, well, he had 7 tackles or, oh, he had 2 sacks. I don't care about that. It's kind of like Jason Owe last year when he was coming out. The guy had 0 sacks.
Right.
He was lightning fast around the edge, did a great job using his hands, really instinctive pass rusher. And he was able to do some things with Baltimore. Or if you go back and look at the episodes where we talked about him, we actually called him to Baltimore. And he's turned into a really nice player for fantasy. I think Enagbare could be that same type of player, but I don't think he's doing it as a rookie. This is a guy that might be a year to 2 away. So I hear the concern, but he still showed me the attributes that I'm looking for in terms of, give me the acceleration, give me the hand placement, give me a guy that's, showing me the fundamentals of what I need. If he wasn't schemed to run some of the other, heavy pass rush moves that we would have liked, like, hey, if they've got him run and contain, he's not going to show us much, right?
Right.
I would have liked to have seen more stunts, more twists, more, let him pin his ears back and really use that collection of moves he has. Because we didn't see, spin moves on display. We didn't see enough. We just saw bull rush and outside edge trying to basically rip swim and bull rush. And that's not enough against your better teams.
Yeah, and he'll definitely develop at least one or two more moves as he comes to the NFL, or else he won't last. One of the things that I did like about him is that you saw consistently in his tape that when the play wasn't to his side, he was chasing it down.
Yeah,
he was, right on the spot for fumbles. He was right there to make a tackle 5 yards downfield. He always has a motor bringing him to the ball, which, that counts for a lot in the draft process, especially for NFL GMs.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to have a motor, and he's got it. You can't teach want to, right?
Nope.
And that's one of those things he has. He's going to go out there and chase down every play, and he's going to go sideline to sideline for you. And having that kind of heart and desire to go get it, that really matters. It helps move him up a little bit for me. And every time I watch him, I just kind of feel like, man, this is one of the best players on the football field right now. And I keep just seeing that number pop up. And so, I'm going to be taking him with confidence, probably in, rookie drafts. I'll probably pop in the 3rd or 4th round. And depending on how my IDP draft goes, if it's IDP only, I might be willing to take him in the top 24 just to take a flyer on him.
Yeah, well, you have to with edges. I mean, in IDP, you need those sack numbers. Almost any scoring format always rewards the sack. So gotta risk it. Gotta risk it.
No risk it, no risk it.
Exactly. Now, speaking of biscuits, let's go down to Florida. Go down to the Panhandle. Jermaine Johnson.
Yep.
Jermaine Johnson. Now, where is he going to play?
Like he's going to be an edge. Yeah, and now when I say edge, that could be a defensive end, then a 4-3. That could be an outside backer in a 3-4. This guy is one of the most scheme agnostic players in this draft. At 6'5", 262, offers great size. Just like Kingsley, who we just talked about. But he's going to end up being a first-round pick. He wasn't necessarily slated that way pre-Senior Bowl process, but this was the number 1 JUCO player in 2019. When Florida State came after him, a lot of other teams were offering him. He ended up going down to Florida State. He has an absolutely devastating spin move. And for those of you that were watching Senior Bowl practices, you got that on display. There was a tackle from Kentucky that the guy just got dusted. He had no chance. Johnson set him up with a little jab step and then hit him with the spin. This kid had no idea what happened. He just got put in the spin cycle like no one I've ever seen. I saw that and it flashed me back to Dwight Freeney, showing my age a little bit here. And it was one of the dirtiest moves I have ever seen. And I had to rewind the DVR on the TV to watch it again because it was so awesome.
You don't see enough spin moves anymore.
You don't. And you don't see them done well. I'll see spin moves where a guy kind of just spins into a player's chest and doesn't make any ground. But he put him on the
spins away from the play. That's
right,
my favorite.
Yeah. And he managed to hit the spin move, got around the tackle, and he was in the backfield like a bolt of lightning. And this guy's not overly twitched up, right? He's not going to go out there. I don't see this guy going out there and putting down a 4.3 or 4.40, right? He's not going to be one of those guys, but his feet are super efficient. His hands and his feet work in concert really, really well to help him gain leverage and set up multiple pass rush moves. And where he was able to come up and hit that step and then nail the spin move, it was one of the nicest little kind of like 2-move setups I've seen in a while. Does a really great job of taking a guy to the outside, making you think he's gonna take you on the edge, and then he can just break your ankles coming back inside too. He has zero trouble working both sides of the tackle's shoulders. Really makes him a nice option as an edge. He could see himself flying up draft boards when this process is over. He flashed at UGA. The only thing is when you transfer from UGA, because he was a UGA player in 2019, and then he went to Florida State. Does he want to compete? And that's going to be the big question mark on him. And I think that's what's going to keep him out of the top half of the first round. But right now, with what he's showing off down in Mobile, the guy is going to be an absolute player, and teams are going to fall in love with him very quickly. He could be a top 12 to 16 IDP pick also.
It's interesting that you say that about the desire to compete. With the transfer portal blowing up, it's kind of wrecking if you're in any pipeline leagues. I know I'm in one, and my strategy was always to take all the small schools and just hope, because they were less expensive. But everybody's leaving now. They're leaving after their senior year. Do you think NFL GMs are really going to hold that against players, being that it's so prevalent now?
I don't think they're going to hold it against them when it comes down to making the pick on draft night. But what's going to come up at the combine in the interviews is when the GM or the scout or the player personnel guy sits down with the player and says, hey, why'd you leave Georgia? Why didn't you want to compete? And they're going to want to put him under some pressure and see what he does. That's the moment that could make or break his draft stock.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to have anything to do with the way he runs or what he's put on film, because all that's fantastic. And what he's putting on film right now down in Mobile is only helping his cause. But those tough questions are coming. The NFL's already said they're not going to allow any funny business. They're not going to allow any, what would you rather be, a dog or a cat, or any of that weirdness? Like, questions have to be pertinent now. And if they're found out asking weird questions, they're going to end up getting fined. It could be drafted.
Are they really? That's fantastic news.
Yeah. So there's a lot of heavily inappropriate questions, and we're not going to repeat them on the air, that were being asked to players. And it's gotten out of control in the last several years. And so the NFL's cracked down on it and said, hey, we're not doing that anymore. We're not allowing that junk anymore. If you do it, we're going to take draft picks. And but that only opens the door for players who transfer, like Johnson, who, he was recruited, ended up going JUCO, then he goes UGA, leaves UGA, goes to Florida State. It's a lot of movement for a player in, 3.5 years. So it starts raising a lot of questions for a player evaluator who's thinking about using a first-round pick or an early second-round pick on you. Those are viable questions, and I think they're going to get asked ad nauseum.
Interesting. Last up, another linebacker. This is a good IDP class. Demarco Jackson out of App State.
Yep. If you are really on it, if you're really paying attention, this is a guy you might be able to get under the radar before the rest of your league is hip to it. He's not going to be a first-round pick. He's probably going to be a second, third-day pick potentially, at least as it stands right now. But Demarco Jackson out of App State is a guy that's showing great quickness, great range, and his ability to tackle and cover is bar none right now. He looks like the best linebacker at the Senior Bowl at the moment. Now, of course, Devin Lloyd didn't show up. Quay Walker didn't show up. So it's really giving him a chance to shine, right? Fact is, this is another 3-down linebacker that a team can draft and plug in, and he can turn into another Logan Wilson type guy. He can play in the pass game. He can play the run. Doesn't matter. Brings devastating hits. His most impressive plays, though, being in the hip pocket of every single tight end that he's had to cover this week, I should say, and knocking away multiple passes. And I don't mean knocking them away like he tackled the guy and the ball fell out. I mean getting his head and hips around, swatting the ball away, and actually making a legitimate play on the football downfield. One of the hardest things for a linebacker to do. And he was doing it in spades, the last couple of days in practice. So really, driving himself up the boards. He'll be a dedicated linebacker. He's not an edge. This isn't a pass rusher. We haven't really seen any pass rush reps from him, at least, nothing that got us excited. But reliable tackler, really good in coverage so far. Really excited to see where this goes for him.
Any size concerns at being 6'1", 230?
If you would have asked me that question in 2009, I'd say, yeah. He's probably not tall enough. He's probably not thick enough. There's probably going to be some issues there. But we live in a league right now where I'm just worried about, can he stay with that tight end over the middle? If I have to cover guys like Darren Waller or George Kittle or, TJ Hawkinson or any of these guys, Mark Andrews, that list has gotten so incredible with these athletic tight ends that having a linebacker that can cover it is instinctive in coverage without having been a converted safety like a Jamal Adams or something.
Right.
That's invaluable. So I don't know that the size will weigh against him. Now, if he doesn't run well, this guy throws up a 4.7, or 4.8. Yeah, and the size, the speed, now it's going to be a factor. But if he goes out and he runs really well, you're talking, if this guy comes out and he lights up the combine, he shows, nice vert, nice 40. He can go ahead and hits the broad jump really well, shows explosiveness and a little bit of long speed. He's a guy that we're going to be saying, hey, this is a sleeper linebacker in this draft class. So just someone to keep an eye on. I'm not saying to go run out and, take him in the first round right now. You could probably get him in the, outside of the top 24 right now in your IDP only drafts. And you could probably take him in the last round of your blended league drafts right now.
That's awesome. I love anybody who has a chance to be a 3-down linebacker in the NFL. Is there anybody else you wanted to hit on?
Not so much for the Senior Bowl, because what was funny is I had like Jermaine Johnson and some of these guys as my alternate players we were going to talk about after the fact, but then those other guys didn't show up, so we kind of messed our whole plan up. But
the best laid plans of mice and men.
Well, it's like they have no respect for our show. It's rude.
And they didn't even call us to tell us.
Their agents, or at least the players, would have, sent us like a message by carrier pigeon or something. But no, I would say, we've got a little bit of time here, so there's not anybody else at the Senior Bowl I want to talk about. But if you're getting ready for your rookie IDP drafts in the coming, weeks or months here, a lot of folks are going to be falling over themselves to get Thibodeau, to get Aiden Hutchinson, maybe Nakobe Dean, because he'll be the top linebacker. The guy that you need to have is Kyle Hamilton. He is far and away the best player for IDP purposes in this draft. And I'm emphatic. I'm planting my flag. He's the guy. 6'4", 220 pounds. He patrols the field like, I don't want to be, over the top here, but he patrols the entire field the way Ed Reed did. And that is a major league compliment. You can go back and check out his game against Florida State if you want to see how he can get from number to number. You can leave him single high. You can play him up in the box. He is an absolute game wrecker behind the line of scrimmage. If you want to bring him on any kind of run blitz, or if you want to try and bring him after the quarterback, this guy makes plays at the point of attack, and he's all over the field. He's fast. He's long. He's big. He tackles. He's the best safety prospect I've seen since Sean Taylor. Wow. I've been doing it for a while. He is my guy. Every time I watch his film, I get so excited because he's one of those football players that just changes the way a defense is played. Notre Dame's defense has been very good the last couple of years, but their front seven makes a lot more mistakes than people realize, and Kyle Hamilton's the guy that cleans it up. So he's an eraser back there.
Where do you see him going in the draft?
Top 10.
Any destination popping out?
He can go anywhere. He can literally go anywhere he wants, and he'll be an impact player. There's no destination in my head that really pops out. I mean, as a 49er fan, I wish there was some way we could go get him. That won't happen. But, you look at some teams that have multiple first-round picks. Yeah, you got, was it the Jets, the Giants, some other folks like that? Jets.
Little Chad Pennington back there.
Here's the thing. I mean, the Jets went and gave a little bit of money to Marcus Joyner last year. You've got Marcus May, who isn't as young as people realize. You have Ashton Davis, but none of those guys are Kyle Hamilton. If you can go
and Marcus May was on a franchise tag, so
right.
I doubt he's coming back.
Right. You let him walk. You bring in Hamilton. He's an absolute eraser in the secondary. We're going to be talking about it's February 3rd, 2022 right now. On February 3rd of 2025, we'll be talking about Kyle Hamilton as the best safety in football. Period. I don't get that emphatic about a player in the draft process unless I'm sure. This guy has Hall of Fame level talent written all over him. I pick 3 guys every year that have kind of that, if there's 3 guys every year that have that kind of Hall of Fame moniker. He's number 1. He's the only one I've got in this draft class right now that I'm like, that's the guy. So can't be more emphatic than that.
That's fantastic. Who are you leaning to with the other 2? You don't have to tell anybody else, just me.
Just you? Oh, okay. It's been kind of a toss-up. So I think a lot of it's going to come down to kind of some landing spots, unfortunately, because, Tom Brady wouldn't be Tom Brady if he'd gone to the Buffalo Bills kind of a thing. No offense, Bills fans. You got Josh Allen now. Be very thrilled with that. I really like Aiden Hutchinson. I think he's a very, very good player, and I think he could be a real difference maker at defensive end. I love him quite a bit. The tackle out of Mississippi State, Charles Cross, he looks like an absolute mauler. He's a dude that I love as an offensive line prospect. Evan Neal will be the number 1 guy drafted on the O-line, but Cross looks really, really good. Still kind of early in the process. I usually don't make these kinds of declarations until middle of April. But Kyle Hamilton, yeah, he's locked in calling it, planting my flag. This guy is number one. There's going to be because I've watched enough of him now that I don't need to see any more. Anything he does at the combine or anywhere else is going to be just gravy at this point.
Ed Reed. That's big.
Yeah.
That's big. I mean,
just go watch go pull up Notre Dame, Florida State. Notre Dame tried like hell to lose that football game, and Kyle Hamilton wouldn't allow it to happen. Watch his ball skills. Watch the way he moves between the numbers. The entirety. He can go single high and he can play the entire field. Watch him diagnose run plays from 12, 13 yards away and make the play in the backfield. The guy is incredible. He has range like no other safety we've seen drafted in a really long time. I absolutely love him. I can't give a direct comp. He's not exactly Ed Reed. He's not exactly Troy Polamalu. He's not exactly any of these guys, but he's definitely the best safety prospect I have seen in a very, very long time, and I can't be more emphatic. Trade up to go get him.
That's amazing. That's awesome to hear. And I hope the Jets get him at 10, but he'll probably be gone if he's as good as you say. Anybody else?
I mean, we can talk a little about Nakobe Dean if you like. I mean, Nakobe Dean is going to be a real, just devastating NFL linebacker. He's going to step in.
Consensus number one linebacker. Everything I've read, he's always number one.
I keep seeing mocks where I'm seeing Devin Lloyd go ahead of him, and I'm like, why? What's going on here? Did people not watch Nakobe Dean's film? Look, Dean can cover. He can tackle. He's, there are times when maybe he doesn't wrap up well enough, perhaps. But a lot of that, I think, just comes down to UGA was showboating in a few games where, frankly, they were winning by a lot. It didn't really matter anymore. But when the chips were down and things had to happen, Nakobe Dean was there recovering a fumble, forcing a fumble, getting an interception, getting a sack, making a tackle. He's going to be – everyone's looking for the next Micah Parsons. He's the closest thing to that in this draft in terms of a linebacker that we're going to see. Because he can line up out on the edge. He can rush from the middle. He can play on the weak side and, stack up a ton of tackles. He's a guy where he'll be gone early-ish, right? I don't know if I have a destination for him, but anywhere where he can go and step in right now on the weak side, and I would love it, honestly, just because I love, Robert Saleh. If the Jets somehow got Nakobe Dean and Kyle Hamilton, and you put those guys together with, Quinnen Williams up there, and if Carl Lawson comes back healthy, and you get, the kid from Detroit, Jared Davis, you get him back healthy. If you can put a few of these pieces back together, I know you don't love it. Gary was
Jared.
Yeah, he's fast. You just need a fast guy sometimes. Let him just get in somebody's way and be fast. And, but these other guys, you're talking about suddenly a really nasty defensive unit, and that turnaround happens very quickly, and now, Zach Wilson can figure out how to play quarterback. You'd be a lot better off. But
no dirty O talk.
Yeah. No dirty O talk.
Gary likes to say, no dirty O.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't like talking about Wilson. It hurts my feelings. Makes me sad inside.
It's okay. We'll have a support group call after this.
Terrible. What about you with Trey Lance? You happy?
I'll be happy when he gets on the field and we get through that first season. I don't know that he's really a finished product yet. We saw what we saw, right? And for us to give up what we gave up, he needs to basically be Josh Allen. A lot of people said, well, he has to be Patrick Mahomes. He's going to be like Patrick Mahomes. He plays more like Josh Allen. That's more of who he is. And that's okay. But I want to see him get on the field, get the reps. I want to see somebody better balance all the tools on our offense. You got Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and now Mitchell. It just seemed like we were all Debo all the time. And Jimmy wasn't doing a good enough job of getting the ball out to other guys to keep the defense honest.
Yeah.
And, if we can move on from Jimmy, I mean, hey, he saves us $25 million if we move him. And hopefully we can trade him, get some of our draft capital back. Who knows? It's going to be an absolute crapshoot over the next, 8 to 12 weeks here.
Yep.
But I would expect to see some things happen in probably the next 4 or 5, because if we can't trade him in the next 4 or 5, we probably cut him.
Well, he'll definitely find a home. When he was on schedule, he looked great. That's Jimmy G.
Yeah,
as long as he doesn't have to make a play to save the season or the game, he does all right. But unfortunately, it generally comes down to a quarterback needing to make a throw, and he.
Yep, that's been kind of his thing, and I don't know that he got a lot of help, say in the Rams game, for example. We didn't do a great job containing that pass rush, and what are you going to do? I guess I'm a little bit of a Jimmy apologist. I look at him and I'm like, we won a lot of games with him. He took us to a Super Bowl. Like, it's hard to hate him, But I hope he goes somewhere that's got a strong quarterback coach, some strong offensive weapons, and he can go show off what he can do a little bit. A great place would actually be Tampa Bay. Let him go replace Tom down in Tampa. And Bruce Arians, he's worked with Andrew Luck and Roethlisberger and Brady and Carson Palmer. And the list goes on and on. You throw Jimmy G in there, and that's still a playoff team.
Yeah, and unless they're going to do a full rebuild, they have to bring. They can't go to the rook. Trask is now a second-year player, but can't go to Trask.
Right. That's kind of my thought.
Yeah, I don't think Bruce Arians going to stick around for a rebuild with Kyle Trask.
Yeah, that's like he's already got a heart condition. I don't think he needs that.
No, no, nobody needs that. Nobody needs that. All right, well, time for final thoughts. Now you can find him on Twitter at NFL_DiMatteo. What's going on? Any last thoughts for people out there?
Well, anybody who's following me on Twitter, I'm sorry, I don't say a whole lot. I just retweet some things from time to time. I'm kind of a strong silent type. And but in terms of final thoughts, man, hey, I'm really thrilled about the Senior Bowl. Very excited about where we're at. Despite all the other stories in the NFL right now with some of the stuff that's going on. We'll get into that later on another show, I'm sure. But the Senior Bowl is going to be really exciting. I encourage everyone to turn it on, watch it, enjoy it. Keep your eyes out for, some of the players we've talked about here. Devonta Wyatt is going to be a game wrecker from the inside. Like I said, if your league uses D tackles, he's worth a look. So, but I think that's all I've got, man.
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm at J.J.and on Twitter. I don't talk a lot on there either. It's a little toxic environment, but thank you to Jeff for joining me tonight. Thank you to everybody out there for tuning in, and make sure you tune in to Getting Defensive every week for your off-season IDP content, and check out Gridiron Ratings for the rest of what you need to know. Lots of stuff breaking. Jeff gave us some little taste, just a little taste. Stick around and you'll get some more. And remember, your path to the title starts with Gridiron Ratings. Good night, everyone.